Hey guys, welcome back to BCMN Bracketology. We've got a ton of videos for you in the next couple days. We've got all the conference tournaments. We're super excited for March. This is going to be our Big 10, Big 12, and SEC conference tournament predictions all in one video. So sit back, relax, and please enjoy this video. And if you're enjoying it, please consider dropping a sub. It really helps us out. Also, comment down below your favorite teams in all these conferences that you think will win it all. So let's hop into the video.
Up first, we got Nebraska versus Northwestern. You asked me this a week ago. I say Northwestern any day. Northwestern just beat Nebraska. It looked pretty okay. Nebraska decides to come out after losing to Iowa, beats Penn State by 23, beats Ohio State on the road by 8, and beating Wisconsin on the road. Nebraska is the hottest team in the country, and they're going to win by a lot against Northwestern.
They're not the hottest team in the country, obviously, but they're still incredible right now. Next, we got Minnesota versus Penn State, both just kind of an all-around irrelevant game. Neither of these teams will win the Big Ten. Minnesota lost their best player, Marcus Carr, in the offseason. Penn State just not great this year. Penn State has come up with the occasional win this year, though, against some good teams. They've beaten teams like Michigan State. I think they beat Iowa earlier this year. They beat Rutgers. They've got some of those solid wins, and they've seen glimpses of hope. So I think they're going to be able to pull off this win just sheerly because of those glimpses of hope.
Yeah. Next we got Indiana versus Michigan. Very solid game. I think whoever wins this game makes the tournament. Indiana is a must-win for sure. If Michigan loses, they have a chance, but it's definitely less likely. I think they played earlier in the season. Michigan won by, I think, 18 or something like that. Michigan has only gotten better. They started to play really well. Hunter Dickinson is going to take on Trace Jackson Davis, and it's going to dominate, kicking Indiana out of the tournament.
Next, we got Nebraska versus Iowa. Honestly, wouldn't be shocked if Nebraska kept pulling off an upset and make it to the next round. They're a very solid team recently. They've been pretty hot. Nobody would have thought they'd be this hot this late. But Iowa, they've just been so complete lately. They've been a very talented scoring team, very capable of hitting that three ball when they need it. They're actually a pretty good away team considering they're playing in the Big Ten. Recently on away, they've beaten Ohio State and Michigan, and they also beat Nebraska in an away game. So I think they're not going to have too much trouble. But I think Nebraska kind of gets unlucky with this second round matchup.
Yeah, I agree. Next, we got Maryland versus MSU. They played just recently, as in a couple days ago. Michigan State won by 10. They played in February. Michigan State won on the road by 2, so that's a close game. I think Michigan State is kind of inconsistent, but they are consistent with beating Maryland, and they can continue this consistency and continue to beat Maryland.
Next, we got Penn State versus Ohio State. I hate picking Ohio State here. You guys know we're not the biggest Ohio State fans. They've messed us up in March Madness before. We don't want to let them mess us up again. Luckily, this isn't quite March Madness yet. Otherwise, I would be pulling the trigger and just pulling the upset. Penn State, though, just isn't that superstar of a team to knock off Ohio State here. Ohio State hasn't been playing great, and I think even if they were up against Nebraska, they would lose this game, or some other teams like Maryland maybe. Which they have in the past. I think in 4 games ago they lost to Maryland. 3 games ago they lost to Nebraska at home. But I still think they're going to be able to beat Penn State.
Yeah. Next, we got Michigan versus Illinois. They've played twice so far this year. Illinois wins both games, won by 15 at home and won by 8 on the road. This road game happened a week or 2 ago. That was the best I've seen Illinois play this year. Their offensive dominance was absolutely absurd. They put up 93 on Michigan. I see history repeating itself. I see Kofi Cockburn dominating Hunter Dickinson and winning the game.
Next, we got Iowa versus Rutgers. This is going to be a great game, I think. Rutgers had a has had glimpses of hope all season. They had one stretch where they knocked off Michigan State, they knocked off Ohio State, and they beat Wisconsin in an away game, and Illinois right after that. Then they went on to lose 3 straight, but these all are against great teams in the Big Ten, so you can't really hold that against them. Iowa, on the other hand, just an incredible shooting team. They've been kind of consistent all year, and they're heating up as the season kind of approaches us. Rutgers, on the other hand, I think last 5 games really haven't been playing that special. Haven't topped 75 points in any of their past 5 games. Having trouble just scoring the ball when they need a bucket. I think Geo Baker's an incredible player, but I think Iowa's got this one here.
Next we got Michigan State versus Wisconsin. This is a tough matchup. Wisconsin has a chance of missing Johnny Davis, their best player. If that happens, I would not be surprised if Michigan State wins. But we're just going to assume that Wisconsin has Johnny Davis. And if that happens, then they're going to win. Wisconsin beat Michigan State earlier in the season on the road by 8 points. I think MSU is too inconsistent. Wisconsin has been amazing this year. Besides this last game to Nebraska, it happens. Nebraska's hot. It's okay. Wisconsin wins.
Next, we got Purdue versus Ohio State. Ohio State, they're very solid because of their size. They've got guys like E.J. Liddell, who's putting up 20 points a game. And yet Purdue's got better size. They've got Zach Edey and Travion Williams, and they have a superstar guard in oh my gosh, it's Jaden Ivey. Oh my gosh, it's been a long day. They're gonna blow them out here. Ohio State is not gonna win this game. Purdue's gonna win by 30. Purdue's such a complete team, and they're starting to act like a complete team, and they're gonna be a scary March Madness team as well.
Yeah, going on to the semifinals of the Big Ten tournament, we got the number 1 seeded Illinois rematching against the number 5 seeded Iowa. Illinois has beaten Iowa twice this year. Does history repeat itself? Sadly not. Iowa just lost by 2 against Illinois on the road. That's a very impressive loss. They actually probably should have won. Missed a couple free throws down the stretch. They're one of the better shooting teams, and sadly, they're going to beat Illinois.
Moving on, we got Wisconsin versus Purdue. These teams just recently played each other, and Wisconsin came up with that win at home, but that was only by 3 points. Considering Purdue has been a shaky team on the road all year, and they put up such a close game against Wisconsin, is just incredibly impressive. Wisconsin won the previous time, 2 times ago when they played, and they were away, but Purdue really wasn't proven yet. I didn't think their chemistry was there. They had the talent, and they've had the talent all season, but now they're starting to piece their team together. And I think neutral site in this game, in this game, especially in Indiana, I think Purdue's going to be able to take this one home just because of their sheer talent and size.
Yeah. And now we got to the Big Ten finals. Iowa, Purdue. They haven't played since I think it was January, so they haven't played in a month. So they didn't. Iowa has since then heated up. Purdue won by 10 on the road. That's a good win. I think Jaden Ivey, Zach Edey, Trent Williams are way too much for Keegan Murray to handle by himself. Yes, he does have help with shooting, but I think they're too big. Iowa does not have the biggest team, and they're just going to pound it in, give it to Edey. He'll score every time. Purdue wins the championship.
Yep, so that's our Big Ten. Stick around, and we're going to hop in right into our Big 12 conference tournaments. Now we've got our Big 12 conference tournament, so these are our selections for these. So first off, we got Kansas State versus West Virginia. Both not too great, but Kansas State recently did beat TCU, one of those crazy good not a crazy good team, but a very solid team. And before that, they were losing tons in a row, but all these teams in this Big 12 are incredible. I do think that Kansas State might be a better team, but West Virginia is just their pacing and how they play defense and how they're coached by Bob Huggins. They're not going to lose this game, and they'll advance.
Yeah, next we got Texas TCU battle in the state of Texas. Both teams are very solid. I give them both props. They've played recently. Texas did win, but that was for them at home. Since that loss, TCU has started to heat up by winning against Texas Tech and then winning against Kansas. 2 top 10 teams. Amazing. Then, yes, they did lose on the road against Kansas and West Virginia. Tough. But TCU is playing better, in my opinion, than Texas. They're going to continue their hot streak and win the game.
Moving on, we got Kansas versus West Virginia. And I don't really think it's going to be a close one. I think Kansas, even if this wasn't a fully away game, Kansas would demolish them. This is also in Kansas City, so Kansas has got some advantage. It might be Missouri, so don't take my word for it.
Next, we got Oklahoma, Baylor. Oklahoma was really good part of this year. They were really good. Hot streaks, beating Arkansas, beating Iowa State, looking incredible. And then they had one of the worst stretches I've ever seen. Recently, actually, they have come out of that slump slightly, winning a couple of good games. Baylor is, I did say earlier that Nebraska is the hottest team. Baylor is probably the hottest team in the country, beating Kansas, beating Texas, beating Iowa State. They're on a roll. They're going to continue this roll and roll over Oklahoma.
Next, we got Texas Tech versus Iowa State. Both really, really solid teams. Texas Tech is just all around kind of complete. They've been a little shaky recently. They lost to TCU, and everyone was like, "Oh, that you can't really lose that game." But then TCU goes on a crazy run, so it wasn't that bad of a loss. They did just lose to Oklahoma State, but they weren't really. Honestly, they were shooting horribly. It was very uncharacteristic of them, and they had many turnovers that you don't expect Texas Tech to play with. You just watch the game, and shots were not falling, so I don't think they'll have that much problem. I think they'll be able to get past it.
Yeah. Next, we got TCU versus Kansas. The third rematch of March for Kansas versus TCU. TCU won by 10 the first time at home. Lost by 4 away. This tournament might be closer to Kansas, but it's not completely a home game for Kansas. I think TCU pulls off the upset once again, beating Kansas for the second time in March.
Yeah, these Frogs are scary. They are a good team. They play at a weird pace, not normally many teams are used to. They're going to sneak into this March Madness tournament, and I could see them knocking off a very big team early on, much like they might do in this conference tournament. Next, we have got Baylor versus Texas Tech. You asked me this a couple months ago when Baylor was a little shaky and Texas Tech was just dominant. It's a completely different story. Texas Tech beat Baylor the last time they've played, but I don't think this will happen again. Baylor has just been dominant recently and very solid, and Texas Tech has been little cracks in them, so I think Baylor will pull this one through.
Yeah. And on to the finals, we got TCU versus Baylor. 2 very good teams. I do think TCU's run sadly comes to an end. Baylor is a 1 seed, one of the best teams in the country, and I actually could see this game being close. TCU did lose on the road to Baylor by only 10, so we'll see how that happens when Baylor does not have home field advantage. But I do think Baylor will get the job done, keep their 1 seed going into the tournament.
So yeah, that's our Big 12 conference tournament. Thank you guys so much for sticking around. And now we have got our SEC conference tournament. So let's get into that video right away. Hey guys, now we've got our SEC conference tournament. So we've got Ole Miss versus Mizzou. Ole Miss is going to win this one. Vegas odds say they should. And I in these little matchups, especially when they're both really bad teams, and just looking at how they play, I think Ole Miss pacing is better.
Vanderbilt, Georgia. Vanderbilt has had some good wins. some tough losses, bringing it close to some good teams. Georgia is absolutely terrible. Vanderbilt's going to win.
Next, we have got Florida versus Texas A&M. Florida, a very good, solid team. They've got some height. They still have that same height and kind of talent as they did last year. They're really only losing to great teams, and they've played Texas A&M before on the road and barely lost. And I think they're going to pull off this upset.
Okay. Next, we got Ole Miss versus LSU. LSU is actually, going to be honest, one of the more underrated teams. They have barely lost to Kentucky on the road. They barely lost to Arkansas on the road. Beat Alabama at home. I think neutral site, LSU wins this game.
Next, we got Mississippi State versus South Carolina. South Carolina putting up fights against good teams like Auburn. They also did just knock off LSU and beat Ole Miss a couple games back. Earlier in the season, they weren't looking too hot, but they've been picking it up and haven't really lost to any bad teams since, and I think they're going to be able to win this one.
Next, we got Vanderbilt versus Alabama. Both teams are actually pretty solid. I think Vanderbilt is underratedly going to win this game, but Alabama has more talent, and they've already beat them this year, so you don't want to go against Alabama right now.
Next, we've got Florida versus Auburn. Auburn, we've been saying they kind of showed some cracks. They're kind of an overrated team in this SEC conference. There's so much talent, and I think putting them in their own division, some people are putting them as like above everyone else by far, and I just don't think that's true. I don't think they're even the best team in the SEC. I think Florida was able to beat them last time by feeding the paint, kicking it out, playing through Castleton, and just being big inside. And I think they're going to be able to do the same thing again. They kind of forced Auburn into some tight situations, forced it a low scoring game, very slow possessions in the first half, and kind of just sticking with them and putting some pressure on them. And Florida's good in these close games, and I think they're going to be able to pull off this upset once again.
Yeah. Now we got LSU, Arkansas. Arkansas, I know I've said it about the previous brackets. Arkansas might be one of the hottest teams. Definitely the hottest team in the SEC, beating Auburn, beating Tennessee, beating Kentucky, beating LSU. They look incredible. Perfect time to get hot. Tournament time. It's March. They beat LSU.
So looking at it next, we got Tennessee versus South Carolina. Tennessee, another one of those hot teams, just been dominant recently. Won a ton straight. Lost one game to Arkansas, but they didn't look like themselves, only scoring 48 points. Arkansas, one of those really gritty teams who really hard to play at their stadium in an away game. Tennessee also just beat Auburn in a great game, performed really well, and just got their rematch victory against Arkansas. So I think they're another one of those super hot teams. We've got so many hot teams in the SEC. I think a lot of these teams in the actual March Madness tournament are going to be dominant.
Next, we got Alabama versus Kentucky. Alabama plays really good against good teams, but this Kentucky team isn't just a good team. It's a great team with amazing players. Oscar Tshiebwe, Ty Washington, Kellen Grady, all three amazing players. And that's just three of the players. They got great defense. They got great bench. All around, amazing team, going to beat Alabama.
Next, we've got Florida versus Arkansas. This Arkansas team is very scary. They've got some size. Jalen Williams is just an incredible forward. He's been dominant all season. And then you've got JD, who's just been an incredible scorer. He's a great guard, and I just don't think that Florida's size can keep up with them. Not size, but like Florida plays with tough, and they have a lot of size, but Arkansas matches them up perfectly, and I think they're going to have no trouble with this game.
Next, we got an amazing third rematch. Tennessee, Kentucky. Both teams playing actually amazing. They played in February earlier, Tennessee did win by 13. They played in January. Kentucky won by 28. So it could go either way in a neutral site. However, Tennessee playing amazing. Beat Arkansas. Beat Auburn. Lost Arkansas. Beat Kentucky. It's based on the hottest team at the moment, and that is Tennessee, and they're making it to the finals.
So now we've got the finals, Arkansas versus Tennessee. They have played a lot recently. They played just end of February, and then Arkansas was able to win that game. And then they played most recently just this Saturday, and Tennessee was able to win that one, both split games. Very different style of play in both those games. The first time, it was kind of the refs were letting them play loose, and Arkansas, their style of play is kind of like little more aggressive. Loved to watch it. Very fun team to watch, and I think they're going to continue that and be dominant. But if they're calling tight fouls like they did in that other game, which was kind of a little ridiculous, honestly, some of those were not fouls, by the way. But I'm getting too far ahead of myself. I think that both teams are very dominant. It's going to determine the pacing of this game, and honestly, the refs could decide this one. But I think just March Madness, you want that aggressive team, that team that's going to make the first move, and that's Arkansas. So I think they're going to be able to win this SEC tournament and kind of come off as one of these underdog teams and win this whole thing. So thank you guys so much for watching. That is our conference tournaments for the SEC, Big 12, Big 10. If you stuck around, thank you guys so much. We really appreciate it, and hope you have a good one.